Well, my name is Oisin Coghlan. I work now for Friends of the Earth, the largest environmental network in the world. And I've worked in environmentalism for 10 years. Before that, I spent 10 years in overseas aid and development, working for organisations like Christian Aid. And in that time, I've gained a lot of experience of working with the Seanad indeed, and TDs and senators of all parties and none. And I think I can bring that experience to bear now in the Seanad on the issues that I want to push forward. I'm running on a platform of climate action and social justice, with a broad vision of a healthy environment, a stronger democracy, and a more inclusive and more equal society. So I think climate action is the most important thing. We need to do the most urgent thing. Ireland has real opportunities in the transition to a zero carbon economy, and we're failing to grasp them. The last government had no action plan on climate for the last 5 years. And I think it'd be really important to have one senator at least. There's no senator there now at the moment, and no senator running, I don't think, who would be putting climate action at the top of their agenda. Obviously I have a broader agenda as well, but really it is the greatest challenge humanity faces, and I want to make sure the electors in the Trinity constituency are able to vote for someone who will be saying climate action first, in order to have a more just society, a more equal society, a more inclusive society, and one that's resilient to the challenges of the 21st century. Because if we don't tackle climate change, many of the other issues we won't be able to tackle anyway.
Considering your very in-depth background in environmental issues, why are you running as an independent rather than under the Green Party, for example?
I've never been a member of any political party, and as someone who chose to work for NGOs, that's made most sense. I talk to politicians and to senators and to TDs of all parties and none, and I've always felt it's an advantage to be able to clearly say that I'm independent, I'm not beholden to any party. So now when I'm coming to say, actually, I think I can make a contribution in the Seanad, which was designed not to be party political, it was designed to represent the different strands of Irish life, the different vocations as it's put there. I think it's really important to have the environmental strand and the overseas aid and development strand, the broader social justice strand, represented on the floor of the Seanad. And I have experience with all those organisations from that party society, and I think I can best bring those voices to the floor of the Seanad as an independent, not subject to the whip of any one party, although I would be very much open to working with all parties in the Seanad and indeed in the Dáil on the committees if I was elected. Of course, there's a proud tradition of independent senators representing the Trinity constituency rather than party political senators, and I think they're best placed to give voice to the causes that Trinity electors want to see progressed through our Parliament. I think they're hugely important. I think college is a special time when people get a chance to critically think about society while also preparing themselves for the world of work and life in general. And I think the pressures on students these days are an awful lot greater than they were when I went to college. The pressure to meet fees, the pressure to have a job as well often, and indeed the pressure, as you mentioned, for accommodation. Housing in the social part of my platform for a more equal society. I think the housing crisis is the top priority for government. It has to be acted on. We need to use all the levers we can, from stopping land speculation to investing in house building, public house building, in using NAMA to release properties onto the market. We need to do something to make it easier for everybody, not just students, but particularly students, to be able to get affordable accommodation. And equally, money should not be an obstacle to students going to college. It should be purely on merit, and we should have a system that allows that to happen.
Do you think the Seanad is relevant in modern Irish politics?
I think so. I worked very closely with senators over the course of the last 5 years and the last 10 years indeed on environmental issues, and before that on development issues, and they're often the people who have a bit more space, a bit more time, and are a bit less beholden to their parties, that they can actually raise longer term critical issues. And the quality of debate in the Seanad is often better than it is in the Dáil, where the party whips and the constituency issues tend to dominate. But actually I do think the Seanad should be fundamentally reformed. I voted to keep it in the election because I think it was gesture politics, that this was what the government was offering for reform by abolishing it. But now that we have decided to keep it, it should be reformed. Everyone in Ireland should have a vote for the Seanad, and indeed overseas citizens should also have a vote in the Seanad. But at the very least, you should be able to, every citizen in Ireland should vote. They should choose whether they want to vote in a university panel or in one of the vocational panels. It shouldn't be unequal as it is now. But the most democratic bits of the Seanad are actually the senators elected by the people who have graduated from TCD and from NUI, and that I think should remain part of the rich mix that the Shannon can bring to Parliament. I actually worked really closely with all of the 3 existing Trinity senators. Back when I worked for Christian Aid, Senator David Norris came on a trip to Israel and Palestine with Christian Aid to see the conditions on the ground there. He already had an intimate knowledge of Israel, but he wasn't as aware of it. He was always a supporter of Palestinian statehood rights. I mean, a fantastic exposure visit with him, and he became a real champion in the Shannon and on the Foreign Affairs Committee that he's been involved in for so many years, with TDs as well, for the rights of Palestinian statehood and the rights of Palestinians who are facing such a crisis. So it shows you how NGOs collaborating with senators and indeed TDs can bring issues to the Parliament and put pressure on government to, in a way, respect the will of the Irish people. There's great support for Palestinian statehood and Palestinian rights in Ireland, but the government isn't always as strong on it. And more recently, Ivana Bacik, before she became a senator, actually drafted the first Friends of the Earth bill on climate change. And then as an independent senator and even as a government senator, she's done what she can to advance that bill in the Shannon. And most recently, Sean Barrett, when the climate change bill was going through the Senate just a few months ago, was the senator who put most time and effort into working with us to craft amendments to improve the bill. And many of them, well, a good number of those amendments were ultimately accepted because senators from various parties backed his amendments and put pressure on the government to actually make some changes. So those are examples of working with Trinity senators over the last 10, 15 years to actually make progress on policy and on parliamentary accountability of government in practice.
And as someone who will be coming from an NGO background who's able to kind of, I guess, network and meet with senators, do you think that if you became elected, do you think there's anything that you mightn't be able to do anymore that you might have previously been able to do as an NGO person, or do you think you might be in a different situation in terms of being able to kind of like network or lobby kind of senators about issues? Do you think you might be losing anything from moving from the NGO into the channel?
I think it would be a change for sure, but I mean, I've been 10 years in my current job. I think the role of senator would be much broader, obviously, and I would be able to use all the contacts with the NGO sector, the civil society sectors that I have developed over the last 20 years to bring not just the voices from environmental NGOs, but overseas aid NGOs, from domestic homelessness and poverty NGOs, from like the Vincent de Paul and Focus Ireland and the Peter McBride Trust, to bring those voices into the Shannon as well, I think would be really important. So it would be a move from being an advocate on behalf of one sector working in one NGO to being a representative of a whole strand of civil society participation, right up from local community development to the big national NGOs. That's who I would see myself being. I would be hoping to amplify their voice, shall we say, and giving it a voice in the Shannon, while also, of course, networking across a whole range of issues. And I would presume from my own experience that once you were a senator, lots of people and organisations would, of course, want to make representations to you. So there'd be no shortage of experts offering their opinion, and I'm pretty good at taking a variety of perspectives and finding what is a pragmatic and practical, but still principled proposals from that, and then putting them forward and trying to work to build a coalition. A lot of your work as NGOs is building coalitions to put forward solutions, and I think I could apply those same skills in the Shannon, working with TDs and senators from all parties to try to put forward practical, pragmatic and principled solutions to the challenges we face. And indeed the fragmented nature of the Dáil means there could be an awful lot more negotiation going on in Parliament to develop solutions that the government could implement, and I think I'd be well suited to that task, and I'd really relish that challenge. I loved my time in Trinity. I had a fantastic time. Probably less pressure than there were in students these days. I had also the great opportunity to live on campus for 2 years because I was lucky enough to get a scholar. So that really enriched the experience, obviously. But even before that, I loved the cross section of people who came here. I loved the atmosphere and the socialising, and I did a fair bit of study, I guess. But yeah, no, I look back very fondly on my days here. And it was a time when students were really active on issues that weren't just about student life. It was the time when the Society for the Protection of the Unborn Child, SPUC, were bringing Ivana Bacik, who was president of the Students' Union in my first year here, and the presidents of the other student unions around Ireland to court for publishing in the physical student handbooks that were still printed in those days the phone number of somewhere you could ring for advice about abortion. And it was a really crucial battle for civil liberties in Ireland, and it wasn't just about student rights and student life, but was at the forefront of campaigning for a more liberal, more open Ireland, and was ultimately successful. And what's interesting now is it's really great to see that as well as all the students' rights battles that are going on, that Trinity students and Trinity Students' Union have taken up the cause of divestment from fossil fuels. Obviously, it's really a cause really close to my heart as a climate activist, as I am now in my day job. And I think the fact that Trinity could take a lead is really important. I'm calling on all candidates in this election to put their names to the open letter that the Trinity Students' Union and the divestment campaign have to the board of Trinity to say Trinity should divest from its €6 million holdings in fossil fuels. And it would be such a symbolic move for Trinity, which has always been a progressive force in Irish society, if Trinity said, we're getting out of fossil fuels over the next 5 years, we're going to not invest, we're going to invest in something else, perhaps in renewables or in clean technology or in something else, and get out of fossil fuels. And I hope this Shannon election can be a real spur to that, because during this election campaign the board will be meeting with the Trinity Students' Union and with the divestment campaign, the anti-fossil fuel campaign. And I think the candidates in this election have a real opportunity to put pressure on the board to look to the future and to get out of fossil fuels. And I hope all candidates sign up, and indeed all graduates who are being canvassed should really think too about signing on to the open letter that exists at the moment.